Shalom. Welcome to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein, and today we have lots to talk about on our show. There's a ton of things going on. So first we'll start with the world in 5 minutes. And the biggest news really that's relevant to our show happened just today, that under the announcement of reconciliation between Hamas and Fatah and the implications of that moving forward with an agreement between those two sides are significant and profound. And I'm not going to try to deal with all of it just in the world in 5 minutes, because we're going to deal with it in most of the rest of the show. There are ongoing issues dealing with Russia and the Ukrainian situation. Russia continues to try, most likely using KGB efforts, to convince Jews that Ukrainian nationalists are anti-Semites. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian Jewish community is very much afraid of a Russian invasion and very much not afraid of anybody in the European-leaning Ukrainian population. And we can talk about that. Perhaps the most dire news from anywhere in the world right now is going on in South Sudan, where attacks on minority populations are continuing, being led by rebel forces. And the rebel forces are led by Riek Machar, are attacking minorities and particularly those belonging to President Kiir's party and those supportive of Kiir's in South Sudan. So we're dealing with some the Dinka leadership. So we're dealing with some rather profound problems there. There's the potential for Sudan involvement and the involvement of other neighboring governments in what's going on there. And the situation is really not only profoundly dangerous to people on the ground, but it's also explosive as far as the fact that it could end up spreading beyond the borders of South Sudan. It already does involve foreign governments. Because there is, at this point anyway, very little European concern and American concern as far as economic interests there, the desire and even the discussion about the events there is very limited. So in a situation that could require significant help from outside of the borders of South Sudan, there seems to be very little discussion of the issue, much less help forthcoming. So that's a pretty dire situation, and in the coming days and weeks we'll be addressing that. You have this weekend Holocaust Remembrance Day. Jews around the world will be remembering what happened during World War II to Jewish communities around Europe. And in Des Moines here, we have a couple different events coming up starting this weekend and going through next week. This Sunday, Dr. Harold Kazimov is going to speak in an event, 2 p.m., at the Capitol Room in Des Moines, and that's 315 East 5th Street. And he's going to talk about Jewish theological responses to the Holocaust. And if the weather will hold up at 1 p.m., prior to that, we will have a memorial service at the Holocaust Memorial on the western side of the Capitol. We know that the Drake relays are ongoing too, and that could cause some traffic problems, but we hope that you will attempt to join us. The Drake relays should be out of the way in that area by the time that those programs start. And then next Wednesday evening, there's a special program at Bethel Jacob Synagogue with Frank Mink, who's a former skinhead who's going to be talking about his life as a skinhead and his life since, somewhat in a toned, changed position, and that'll be very interesting. That program, I believe, is at 7 o'clock Wednesday night, April 30th. So Those are events that are all coming up, and that is the world in 5 minutes.